this. Okay, so now we're recording. Let me start off by giving you some instruction about your discussion. I'm a fussy person when it comes to discussion. Unfortunately, I am not allowed to modify the course descriptions. I can't do that. I used to be able to do that, but I no longer can do that. It says here, and I want to be very clear on this, due by Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time, end of week 1. So discussion 1, it says, is due by Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time, end of week 1. That is not correct, okay? It's very important for you guys to understand this. If you submit your discussions and your two replies to students by Saturday or on Saturday, I'm going to deduct points, and I don't want to do that. So let me quickly show you something. Your main topic, the main post, is due by the end of the day Wednesday. You guys understand that?
Yes.
So you must have your main, all 4 weeks, in order to get full credit for it. That's assuming you do a good job with it, obviously. But if you get it in any time after Wednesday of the week, you're going to lose points. So, and again, just so that you understand, I have, as the instructor, I have the right to do this. I have the right to request this of you. This is my, this is my contribution to the course. So your main post must be in no later than Wednesday, end of the day. Then you must also reply 2 times to 2 different students. And I would ideally like you to do that on different days. Now, why am I being so fussy about this? I'd like to feel that you are really contributing to the course. And the best way to contribute to the course is to spend, even if it's only a few minutes here and there, doing these things. Okay?
Okay.
So do you understand why I'm saying this? The main topic should be in by Wednesday. Why? Because we're having a discussion. And if you wait until Saturday, are we really having a discussion? If everybody put their discussion posts in on Saturday, how is that a discussion? It's not. It's just a bunch of people slamming in their work. You see my point? No, it's the truth. Think about it, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Nobody gets a chance to read anybody's work. Nobody gets a chance to critique somebody's thoughts or give them a counter thought or whatever. You see what I mean? So the main post must be in by Wednesday. Very, very important. Each week, keep that in mind. That's what I expect from you. And then I'd like you to do at least 2 replies. You can do more if you'd like, but at least 2 replies, and I would like them to be on 2 separate days. And it can be any time, day or night. I really don't care, as long as you get them in. And please, and this is very important, do not post anything on Saturdays, because I get annoyed by that, and I will deduct points for it. And again, the reason I get annoyed is because at the very beginning of the course, I lay down the rules, essentially saying what I expect you to do. Okay, so again, this is just so that I know that you are actually making an effort to participate in the course. Does that seem fair to everybody?
Yep.
Okay, and is it clear? Any questions about it?
No, sir.
Okay, all right, good. Then I'll ditch this for the moment. And back to this. Okay, so here's the deal. What you're going to do is you're going to read retouching, how much is too much. And essentially what you're going to do is you're going to think about these points down here, and you're going to make a discussion based on those points. Now, one thing I would like to remind you is you are reading an article, so I would like you to use APA referencing and citation. Very important. Since you are using a document and since you are critiquing a document, I need you to do that. I need you to use APA referencing and citation. And it would be nice if you put a name and a title to your submission as well. So I'm looking for you to, in your discussion, give me a name and a title, and give me your thoughts based on what you read in the document, and give me some citation.
Okay.
Okay. So that's it. Now, the next thing is to the assignments. The assignments, assignment 1, creating a desktop wallpaper design. I'm gonna show you some stuff tonight. Eventually I'll get to something. But the bottom line is you're just gonna create a nice little wallpaper design. The most important thing for you to understand is it must be color. The size of the document must be 4 inches by 9 inches. And here's the thing that I think people mess up on. You have to submit a JPEG file and a native PSD file in the Dropbox. So I can do 2 things. I can look at your image, and then I can also look at the PDF if I want to see what's going on with it. Okay?
I kind of had a hard time with that too.
Well, here's the other thing, and I might as well mention this right now. I will be here tomorrow night between 7 and 9 o'clock, and somebody's making noise back there. Can you, whoever it is, try to quiet it down? I will be here tomorrow, 7 o'clock until, I'm sorry, 5 to 7 Mountain Time, if anybody needs to stop by, okay?
Okay.
All right, so, and also, just so that you know, Wednesday and Saturdays, I'm in Blackboard Collaborate. You guys know what that is?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
All right, so I will be in Blackboard Collaborate from 7 o'clock till 12 o'clock on Wednesday, and 7 o'clock until 12 o'clock. Or did I say 7 o'clock till 11 o'clock on Wednesday?
No, you said 12.
No, I'm sorry. 7 o'clock till 11 Wednesday, and
Okay.
7 o'clock, yeah, I thought I did. 7 o'clock till midnight on Saturday.
Wow.
You guys can come by. You guys can get help from me if you want. You guys can simply stop by and you could say, hey, you know, I'm getting ready to submit this. You want to take a look at it? Give me some critiquing on it before you do it, whatever. But at any rate, tomorrow night I'll be in if you need help. Wednesday night, I'll be in Blackboard Collaborate. Saturday night, I'll be in Blackboard Collaborate. If I'm not mistaken, I think I put that in one of your announcements. Does anybody recall that I did that? You guys
Yes,
did
we
the
did.
announcements?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys see that I did that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you shouldn't have any question about that. And eventually, I haven't received the information yet, but I will have a teaching instructor, a teaching assistant, and I will post her or his information so that you could also contact them if for some reason you are unable to reach me. So hopefully with all of that, you'll have everything that you need to get you where you have to go. Somebody's got a radio on. Could you please find, I don't know who it is. I don't want to mute everybody. If you could just shut it down, I'd appreciate it. Hello?
Hello? No radio here.
No, I'm not saying it was. Let me see. Yeah, I guess it's Victoria. I muted her. Let me unmute these guys. I don't know why they're muted. Okay. All right. All right, so that's basically the assignment. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into that anymore right now. I mean, do you have any questions? Let me ask you that. Got any questions?
No, sir.
No? You're good?
No, sir. Yeah.
All right. Somebody else has got something on. Give me a second. Maybe it's Arthur. All right. Now, finally, the other assignment that I want to mention to you right now is, let's go back to the assignments. And the third assessment is a quiz. Okay? The quiz is actually a very simple quiz. And if you want, I can give you a general idea of what that quiz is based on, and you can kind of go from there. So basically, it's going to ask you about Photoshop images, what Photoshop images are based on. And you are going to have to talk about that. You're going to have to answer a question about that. Okay?
Okay.
And then it's going to show you one of the panels, and it's probably one of the most common panels that you will come across. It's one that you use more than any other panel. I don't want to tell you exactly what it is, but I'm doing my best to give you a good idea of what that panel might be. And that's your next question. And then the next question is talking about selecting. And what do you use to select things using shortcut keys? So it would be a very good idea to know how you can select things using shortcut keys. All of these things are very easy to understand, and if I'm not mistaken, there's probably a chapter or something that you're going to be reading on, you're going to be reading out of, that will give you all this information anyway. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then it asks you a little bit about selections and manipulating selections and what that's all about. So you'll answer that question. It's, again, what are selections about in an image, and how can they be manipulated independently? In a sense, what are they? And you'll see what I mean. And again, I don't think it's a very difficult question. And then it asks you the number of undos that are available to you in Adobe Photoshop. Now, quick question. Does anybody have any idea how many undos you have in Photoshop?
20.
Huh? How many
20.
undos? No. Nope. So you better check it out. You better check it out. Don't take it for granted, because you do not. You have something else, but you do not have 20 undos. You can have as many as 20 undos in Adobe Illustrator, but in Photoshop, you get the exact opposite. Okay?
Oh, you get it unlimited.
Not zero and not unlimited or limited. And I don't want to tell you. So make sure you check out how many undos you have in Photoshop. And make sure that you know what shortcut key you can use to select things with. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing is, if you have, let's see. So it's asking you what essentially is the purpose of the help menu. And I don't think you'll have any trouble with this answer. It's incredibly logical. I mean, it's just an absolutely logical question. I would be amazed if you missed it. It just is very simple. Just use common sense and you'll have the answer on it. And then finally, it asks you about importing a multi-layered image into Photoshop. How do you do it? And again, it's one of these things that it's logical. Again, very logical. So I just wanted to very quickly go over those points with you to give you an idea of what the course or what this quiz might be. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So what I have next for you is I have a PowerPoint, and I'm actually going to do one thing, and then we'll move on to Photoshop. Before we get into Photoshop, I would like to discuss with all of you what basic image editing in Photoshop is all about. There are two different types of images that are available to us as graphic designers. Would any of you happen to know what they are?
Raster and vector.
Oh, who said that?
Robert.
Robert, you know, that's exactly right. That's it. Raster and vector. Very good. You know what the difference between raster and vector are?
Pixels. I believe that raster is made for the internet, and vectors for printing.
No.
The other way around?
No, not quite.
Raster is pixelated. It's based on the colors are pixelated, and vector-based images are mathematically
Generated.
calculated.
Great. Who is that?
Amanda.
Good, Amanda. Thank you very much. That's absolutely right. So let me tell you a little bit about raster and vector images, because it's very important that you understand this stuff before you actually get in. It's even more important in our course. You guys, any of you guys had any Illustrator courses yet?
Yes.
Amanda?
Uh-huh.
Oh, good. Okay. So you guys, if you haven't, you will be having Illustrator courses, and you will learn about vector images. Vector images are a lot easier to deal with in the end, and I'll tell you why. Because each of these images, the raster image and the vector image, has its own dependence or independence, as it will. Adobe Illustrator, which is vector, is resolution independent. Now just keep that in mind, resolution independent. While Photoshop, which is a raster file or a bitmap file, or a bitmap editing program, Photoshop, is resolution dependent, which means essentially that, in the simplest terms, a resolution independent piece of art, like in Illustrator, can be made as big as you want or as small as you want, as much as you want.
Without losing quality.
Yeah, without losing any quality whatsoever. If you're in Photoshop, on the other hand, because of the resolution dependence, you cannot change the size much greater than the size that you have without losing resolution or image quality. So there's a trade-off between making something bigger. And you know what? A little later on, I'm going to demonstrate that to you so that you kind of understand how this works. Okay, I'm going to visually show you how to do that. I got a couple of files open. Again, I think this is absolutely essential stuff for you to understand, because one of the big problems with Adobe Photoshop is that if you're working on a file that isn't big enough, you could spend hours making a file beautiful. You could make a really beautiful piece of art only to find out in the end that you can't make it big enough to do what you have to do. And then you've wasted however much time you've put into that piece of art. So it's important for any one of you who are going to really be working with Photoshop, and every one of you are, because you're all going to be graphic designers, right? Are all you guys working towards being graphic designers?
Yes, sir.
So you see, that's what I'm saying. You really need to know this stuff, and somebody should explain it to you, and explain it to you very well. So this is the first week. This project that you're working on, which is essentially a desktop or a wallpaper. I mean, that's a very silly, simple little project. It's nothing that, you know, that's going to kill anybody. I'm sure every one of you could do this, but you really need to understand a little bit about this program going in, because next 3 weeks I'm going to have you working on things which are a little bit more sophisticated, and we're going to be editing files, and those type of projects that we're going to be working on week 2, week 3, and week 4 fall into the category of the kind of projects that you could spend hours working on something like this only to find out that the file's too small and you've wasted a lot of time. So it really is a good idea, especially in Photoshop, that somebody covers this information with you, because it does apply to Photoshop. As far as Illustrator is concerned, I would talk about it and I would demonstrate it quickly, and then I'd move right on, because resolution independence means you don't have to worry about how big something's going to be. You don't have to I can make something really tiny that's going to end up being huge. And if I do a nice job with that tiny little piece of art, when it goes up huge, it's going to look just as gorgeous as if it were tiny. You do not have that situation in Adobe Photoshop. Okay? So, beginning image editing. Let's go to the next slide. Raster graphics are digital images created or captured, for example, by scanning a photo. So, a really good example of what would be a typical raster graphic file would be a photograph. You would not be working in Illustrator with that photograph. You would be editing or modifying that in Photoshop. A raster is a grid of X and Y coordinates on a display space. So we're looking at our screens, right? The screen is made up of grids of tiny, and actually probably 72 to 90 pixels per inch. dots that is essentially what your screen is showing you. So whenever you look at a piece of art that's on the screen, you can pretty much imagine what you're looking at is something that has no more resolution to it than 72 to 90 pixels per inch. Now, we'll talk more about resolution in a few minutes because there are 3 different levels of resolution that you need to be aware of. You now are aware of one, which is the web, and that's 72 to 90 pixels. Did somebody want to ask me something?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. That's why I give you guys the mic. You're free to speak. The raster file is sometimes referred to as a bitmap because it contains information that's directly mapped to the display grid. So I'm sure you've heard the term or heard people talk about a raster graphic or a bitmap, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they're the same thing, okay? Raster files. A raster file is usually larger than a vector graphic image file. So how do I explain that to you? The raster files have a myriad of pixels, whereas the vector file more or less has the same pixel that's mapped into an area that's created by some anchor points and line segments. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Anybody? So imagine that a picture that has an inch by inch, 72 pixels per inch, there's 72 pixels per inch, okay? Whereas if you're taking something that's an inch, it might be 1 or 2 or less color in Adobe Illustrator, and it's a line segment anchor point. Raster file is usually difficult to modify without loss of information. So that's one of the problems when you're working in Adobe Photoshop. A lot of the work that you do in Photoshop is going to ultimately end up with you losing some of your information that you're working on in your file as you cut it apart, as you tear it apart, as you modify things, and as you save things. Some of your information ultimately is going to end up getting lost. How you control that, obviously, is going to determine what kind of a designer you are. If you manage to control that okay, then you'll come up and create wonderful things. With the little loss that you have, it's not going to matter because your piece will end up looking terrific. There are software tools that can convert raster files into vector files for refinement and changes. Actually, I think week 3, I'm not sure whether it's week 3 because I don't remember when I did it, but I'm actually going to demonstrate how to convert a raster file into a vector file in Adobe Illustrator. It isn't it isn't something that I'm mandated to do in this course, but I think it's very important that you guys know how to do these things, or at least know that these things are available to you. And as an instructor, I want to make sure that you know. This is all I need. Diesel, stop it! D. Examples of a raster image file are bitmap, BMP, TIFF, GIF, and JPEG. Now, BMP, I don't know. I put it in there. I never use BMPs. I just don't ever get to use them, ever. TIFF files are basically a file format that you would use for print. Mike, would you stop him? TIFF and then GIF and JPEGs are both web fonts, or not fonts, web formats. I don't use GIF very often. What I use instead are PNGs, PNG files. We'll talk more about that later as well. All right. So what is Photoshop? Photoshop is the predominant photo editing and manipulation software on the market. Photoshop uses a range of full-featured editing tools, modifying photos or to create intricate digital paintings and drawings that mimic those done by hand. Before we dive into specifics, let's answer the question, what is Photoshop? Oh, what's this, a duplicate? Yeah, I guess it is. Huh. Excuse me. Let me get on to the next one there. Somehow or other managed to get a duplicate in there. What, I got 3 of them? All right, well, anyway, before I waste a lot of time on that, let me come in here. And what I did is I got us two videos to watch. these two videos are basic introduction videos to Adobe Photoshop. And if you guys happen to go into the announcements, I think you'll see I left you links to this. I also left you some files and some information that you can use, and I think I even put the PDF, not the PDF, but the PowerPoint for what I'm using tonight. So you can find all that in your announcements. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I got these two. These two rather simple videos for us to look at, and then after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Photoshop, and I'm going to do a few things that I think might help you with what you're going to do this week. And also, my goal tonight is to try to make you guys understand a little bit about this whole idea of resolution.
Can I ask you a quick question before we do the video?
Go right ahead.
Back to the file formats, the TIFF, the I don't use BMP either,
Right.
the PNG and everything.
Mm-hmm.
PNG is one of the lossless formats. Is that correct?
PNG, there's two different PNGs. The PNG that you generally use is the PNG 24. Yeah, and that is more or less, I don't know whether I would call it completely lossless, but you cannot optimize it. So it's essentially, why you use it is because you're going to be creating some level of transparency in your image. Mm-hmm. So if you had an image that you wanted a silhouette like me against a white wall, and you wanted to drop me out so that and you'll see me do this. You'll see me actually cut somebody out like that. But and I think it's probably in, let's see, week 3, where you're actually creating your fantasy creatures. Yeah, so PNG is essentially, it is supposedly lossless. There are two different types. There's one PNG, I think it's PNG 8 and PNG 24. I never use PNG 8. Never.
I don't either.
No, and because it's essentially more or less like a GIF, and I don't ever use GIFs. If I'm going to work on something for the web, it's either going to be a JPEG or a PNG 24. Those are the two that I use right now. Originally, PNG 24 was not used as much because it wasn't completely supported. But today, it's pretty much supported everywhere. You don't have any problem with it anywhere you go. So it's something that you can use. And also, most everybody today have higher speeds of download. So they don't have the problem with bringing in larger images, which is what you get with a PNG. You get a larger image. The image isn't optimized the same way as you could optimize a JPEG.
Right. Now, with the JPEGs, I have always been taught that if you save a JPEG or save as a JPEG and then reopen the saved JPEG and go in and try and edit it again, that it is a very lossy format.
Yep.
And you lose more and more information every time you resave it as.
Yeah, that's very true. So yes, that's absolutely true.
Okay.
So what you would really want to do is make sure, and this is critical,
the PSD
you want to make
file.
sure that, you always want to make sure you preserve your PSD file, because if for some reason you need to go back in and modify something within your image, you don't want to go in and mess with your JPEG file. What you want to do is you want to go back to your original file, your native file, and you want to edit that and then resave it again and re-optimize it again. And you sound sort of like you know a little bit about this, but I at some point will also show you a little bit about optimizing so that you get a sense of what that's all about as well.
Okay, I was just double checking those facts. Yeah. I've been a graphic designer for about 15 years. So.
Good. Did you start off before the computer?
I started about 1998. I started teaching myself. I started doing it professionally around 2001. Mm-hmm. I taught myself for a long time, got my associate's degree in web design and graphic design, and have freelanced ever since.
Good. Excellent. Where are you located?
I'm in North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay, very good. All right. So I'm going to just run these two videos. Again, these videos are very basic videos. Tonight, it's a very basic course. We're just going to talk about the program a little bit, give you the opportunity to ask me questions. We asking something? Oh, that's me. Reverbing. Great. Got that happening. All right, here I go. I'm going to play this video. Somebody's reverbing. I think it's Mariah. Is that it? Yep, it was Mariah. I had to cut you off, Mariah. I'm sorry. All right, here we go. I'm going to start this first video.
Adobe Photoshop CC is a family of desktop and mobile apps connected to each other and to your creative assets using Creative Sync technology. With it, you can create and edit images and designs to show anything you can imagine, from polishing and perfecting your photos to creating something out of this world. Create amazing images designed for print, web and apps, create videos and animations, work with 3D content, and so much more. Whether you are shooting with a DSLR or mobile device, Photoshop and Adobe Lightroom work together, hand in hand. Start your photography workflow in Lightroom on your desktop or mobile device, then bring your photo into Photoshop for more sophisticated edits. And when you're finished, switch back to Lightroom to organize, print, and share your work. Photoshop helps you make your images the best they can be, from basic edits like correcting exposure, adjusting color and lighting, cropping and straightening, to more advanced edits, like moving subjects within your image, or you can transform your images into something entirely different. Get creative and add blur effects, combine multiple images to create whole new scenes, or let your imagination run wild and create something absolutely breathtaking. And you can perform a variety of retouching tasks, such as restoring an old photo or editing a portrait. Almost anywhere you look, Photoshop has been used to create beautiful and inspiring designs. See the results in posters and billboards, mobile app designs, websites, typography, logos, paintings, illustrations, and movies, just to name a few. Integrate with Illustrator and InDesign for a comprehensive design workflow, and leverage Creative Sync functionality to reuse your design assets using Creative Cloud libraries to save time and promote collaboration amongst team members, or to access a variety of fonts and then add text effects to create stunning designs using multiple layer effects. Photoshop gives you powerful tools for creating multiple layouts for websites and mobile apps, as well as projects destined for print. You can even test your web or mobile app designs on real devices. You can use Photoshop with Adobe's amazing family of mobile apps, like Adobe Comp CC, Adobe Photoshop Mix, and Adobe Capture CC. So no matter where you are or what device you're on, you can easily capture and create what inspires you and continue your work using Photoshop on the desktop. Work with the video tools in Photoshop to combine stills and videos using a simple timeline to create your own unique movies. And you can basically do anything to your video footage that you can do to a still image, such as remove unwanted objects from frames, repair using cloning and healing tools, and add effects. Don't feel limited to 2D. Enter the third dimension by adding 3D figures and objects to your 2D designs and images in Photoshop, and get the flexibility of 3D to take your work even further. Even design and print 3D items, from useful objects to beautiful or fun artwork. With Photoshop CC and Creative Cloud, you can create something amazing wherever inspiration strikes.
There. So, you know, again, it's more or less like a selling tool, but the bottom line is it gives you a very good idea of the power of this program. Will you do all this stuff? I don't know. I have no idea what you're going to do with it. I know what I do with it. I have to do a lot of artwork preparation for different companies that I work with. I work with a dentist. Actually, he's an orthodontist, prostodontist is what he is. He does prosthetics.
Sounds like a dinosaur.
Yeah. Yeah, he is kind of like a dinosaur. He's a dinosaur that went to Harvard.
Yeah.
He's a heck of a nice guy, but we do very elaborate retouching on some of his images, and I work for a company that does that they sell floor coverings, wood and different types of material floor coverings. So I do a lot of work for them, and I actually have one of the projects that I work on for them. I'll show it to you in week 3. You can take a look at that. It's kind of a retouching project, although unlike the retouching project that we do in week 2, that's actually when I'll show it. Unlike the retouching that we do, which is not something that I do very often, this retouching involved taking cabinets that already existed in a photograph and applying a different surface to them, because the surface that they were using was different than the surface that was on the photo, and it was a new surface, and they did not have any built cabinets yet, so they needed a kitchen to look like their surfaces. So I actually had to do 14 of them. What a nightmare that was. Now I'm in the process of doing 21 floors, and perhaps next week I'll bring in one of them and show you one of them as well. I think they'll give you a really good idea, though, of the kind of things that you will probably come across as a graphic designer, because it's something that I came across as a graphic designer. And if I can come across something like that, who's to say you won't? You see what I mean? It could be something very much like that. So it's important for you to take a look at some of the work that someone like myself is doing as a graphic designer. You will probably find yourself at some point or other doing something rather similar to that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's look at the other video real quickly. Now this one here, there's a whole bunch of others in here. I don't think I'm going to go through them all.
To answer the question, what is Photoshop? Well, Photoshop is the world's leading image editing application. It's used to create images for the internet, for print, for other new media disciplines. It's been used by millions of graphic designers, artists, photographers, visual communicators, web designers, and teachers. It's possible for every image you've ever seen, for posters, for book jackets, for CD covers, for the internet, has either been created or edited with Photoshop. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and it's used to enhance and edit images, photographs, and pictures of all kinds. The purpose of this video is to empower educators who have little or no experience with Photoshop with some of the fundamental skills, so that you can immediately engage with the product and begin to foster creativity in your classroom. In this video, we will answer the following questions. What can I do with Photoshop? What does Photoshop look like? How can I begin to use Photoshop? By exploring Photoshop's capabilities, overall user interface, and key functionalities that new users need to know how to begin to engage with this product, we'll be able to make a start. So the first item on our agenda is to answer the question, what is Photoshop? Well, Photoshop is the world's leading image editing application. It's used to create images for the internet, for print, and for other new media disciplines. It's been used by millions of graphic designers, artists, photographers, visual communicators, web designers, and teachers. It's possible for every image you've ever seen, for posters, for book jackets, for CD covers, for the internet, has either been created or edited with Photoshop. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and it's used to enhance and edit images, photographs, and pictures of all kinds. We're now going to transition to the next question on our agenda. What does Photoshop look like? But before we discuss the specific product functionalities, we're going to take a few minutes to explore the overall user interface. Along the very top of Photoshop, you can see a group of menu options, each one offering up another series of choices that can be made by clicking or scrolling over the specific word. For example, if I want to actually start by opening an image, I would click File. On the very left-hand side of Photoshop, you can see a series of tool icons. Each tool icon represents a different tool set or a type of tool that you might use for manipulating or for changing and editing an image. Some of them have a small triangle at the bottom right-hand corner, which allow you to enter a series of other choices. For example, the crop tool, we can get different types of crop tools. And for example, with the brush, if we click on the bottom right-hand corner, we can see that within the brush tool, there's also a pencil tool, a mixer brush tool, and other options too. Right at the bottom, we have a series of choices for color, and simply by clicking on the color palette, we can see that the color palette comes to the fore, and then we can either slide our color changer up and down through the spectrum, choosing the amount of blue, or dark blue, or light blue, or whatever color you decide. You'll also notice that when you click on one of the tool options on the left-hand side, the top menu is content sensitive and will bring up another series of options for you to select from. On the right-hand side of the Photoshop window, you'll notice a series of boxes with words like layers, channels, adjustments, style. We'll look at these more closely as we go along. At the bottom of the Photoshop interface, you'll find some key information. Things like the percentage size of the document. If I click as I zoom into this photograph, for example, you'll see that I've gone from about 15% to 50%. So how do I begin
Okay,
to use
I think that's enough for tonight.
The purpose of this video
I have to mute you. Okay, so that'll give you a little bit of an idea. Maybe I'll run a little bit more of that in the other courses, although I have other videos as well. All right, so now I have Photoshop open, and what I have is several different images open here. And what I would like to talk about with these images, I'd like to talk about image resolution and image size. And you kind of saw a little bit about the interface. Does anybody have any questions about the interface, or does anybody have any problems with the interface? Amanda, it sounds sort of like you know the interface a little bit, right?
I work with it every day.
Good. How about you other guys? Anybody in there familiar with it at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, this is Rob, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so what's going on here? So the first thing is let me just go to our assignment and give you a look at a document. So I'm going to go to the File menu, and I'm going to go New, and I get the New Document dialog box. So let's say, for instance, that I'm about to prepare my file for this project, the desktop wallpaper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this thing wallpaper. And I can come in here if I want, and there are all different presets here. There's default Photoshop size, US paper, international paper, photo, web. So the preset, I think what I'm going to be using here is web. And the reason that I am doing that is because I'm going to be making some wallpaper. Now, it says here, and this I find a little bit strange, it says that the size must be 4 inches high by 9 inches wide, which to me is a little counterintuitive, actually, because if you think about it, a wallpaper is something that you put on the screen of your monitor, your desktop. And it's obviously a web project, and yet they've got it down as 4 inches by 9 inches wide. So, okay, well, you know, that's not the end of the world. I can do a couple of things here to make that happen. I can come in here and I can change this if I want to inches. And okay, so now I see that the width on this is actually 14 inches wide. And I don't really want 14 inches wide. What I'm looking for is 9 inches wide. And then for the height, I want 4 inches. So now I've got 9 by 4, And if I want to go back to pixels, because I'm going to be working in, and the reason I'm showing you this is because there is a possibility that you guys might be working on something for the web, or you might be working on something for print. And I don't really think you're going to be, if you're working on a project for print, I don't think you're really going to be using pixels. I think that logically you're going to be using something like inches. And if you're going to be working on something for the web, you're not logically going to be using inches, you're going to be using pixels. So it's a little bit strange that they're asking for a project that's a web-based project to be in inches here. So that's why I'm kind of covering this. So now that I've put in 9x4, those are the sizes that I want. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to change it to pixels. And now I can see that I get a width of 648 pixels by a height of 288 pixels. Now that is the correct amount of pixels for that size image, okay? And it was really easy to do that. I mean, just literally coming in here and changing it from inches to pixels. That's all there is to it. Now, as far as the resolution is concerned, this next thing I'm going to be doing after I create this document for you is I'm going to be going through the different levels of resolution. We're going to talk about the different resolution levels, and I'm going to do that with some images, and I'm going to save some images and change some images for you and talk about why I'm doing it and what I'm doing it for. Amanda, I don't know, what kind of work do you do primarily? Web work, or do you print work, or both?
I do both.
You do both. Okay, so you are sort of familiar with the different levels of resolution, the different basic levels of resolution that we deal with pretty much all the time?
I work with 72 pixels per inch with most of my web products, and the 300 dpi or pixels per inch for anything general as far as print.
Okay, but there's some more specific information which I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you a little bit more. Now, you can tell me that you know this when I get to it, but I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about that because it's a little broader than that, and I'll get to it in a minute. But okay, so now we're going to be doing a wallpaper, right? So the wallpaper is something that theoretically we're going to put on our desktop. So that would mean that we would have to have a resolution of around 72 pixels per inch, which is what this is right here. See it? Or it's possible we could go to 90. Whoops. We could also go to 90 pixels per inch. But as a rule, as a general rule, 72 pixels per inch is what we use. And then, of course, we're going to be using RGB color. Why are we going to be using RGB color? Does anybody know?
RGB is used for screen resolution. CMYK is used for print.
Correct. So essentially, when we're working on something that is web-based, we're going to be using RGB because that's the correct color mode. If we knew that we were going to be doing something for print, we could easily come in here and we could change it to CMYK, just like that. So actually, why I'm bothering telling you all this stuff is because, generally speaking, when you create a file of some kind, it's going to be for some sort of project. And it usually is a pretty good idea to go in when you set up your new document as close to what you're going to need in the project as you can. It's the best way to go about doing it. So basically, that's it. Background content, if I want a background on this, I can make it white, background color transparent. Essentially, the two things that you should know here is if it's white, then it's usually a locked down layer. Do you know what I mean when I say a lockdown layer? When
it cannot be altered.
Well, it's originally it's locked down. It means that it's locked. You can double click on that layer and open the layer. You see what I'm saying? You know the layer lock? You know what I'm talking about, Amanda?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a little lock on the layer. When you open up an image, usually that lock is engaged because the image is locked initially by default. But if
you can double click it and it'll take it off.
That's exactly right. And what I'm getting at here is if you ask for the background layer to be transparent,
it won't show up.
It will, yeah, and it will mean that that layer will automatically come out unlocked because they have to have a white layer or a colored layer in order for that layer to be locked. If it's an unlocked layer, you can then have a transparent layer. I don't know whether you know that or not, but that's how it works. Okay, so, and then of course you have different color profiles here and stuff like that, which at this point we just don't need to worry about. So really what I'm mostly concerned is that you understand that you name your thing, come in here and set it up to the right size to make it easier for you. I changed it to pixels for a moment, put in 9x4 and then switched it back to inches, and then switched it back to pixels. The resolution in this case is 72 pixels per inch because that's what you would be using if you're creating something for the web. Now all I got to do is hit OK, and I get my image. And there's my wallpaper piece of art. And if you take a look at this wallpaper, it's showing it at 100%. So that is basically the piece of art that you're going to create. And if you want, you can go to the View menu and fit on screen, and you can make it a little bit bigger so that you can see it. Okay? So that's more or less how you would create a piece of art, how you would start off creating a piece of art. Any questions?
Not from me.
Good. All right, so I'm going to go back to package PSD. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the 3 different levels of resolution. And why I say there's 3 is because there are 3 primary types of devices that you'll probably come in contact with regularly. The monitors and devices, the screen devices, anything like a monitor. And the next one would be the like a color copier or a color digital printer. And the third would be an offset, a high-end offset environment. When I say offset environment, I'm talking about 4-color process printing. So if you're creating a piece of art that's going to go into 4-color process printing, you have to have some very specific things set up within your art to do that. Whereas if you're going to use something like a digital printer, the digital printer doesn't have the same requirements. You know, when I say a digital printer, I'm talking about a color copier, the kind of color copier that you would find in Adobe color and Kinko's. Anybody have a Kinko's near them?
Yep.
You got Kinko's? Okay. Any of those I'm sorry, were you saying something?
You're talking about places who run the have industrial printers that run like the cyan, magenta, the yellow, and then the black, one pass at a time.
Right. You're talking about high-end
Yes.
printing environment. Right. So that would be where you would need 300 pixels per inch.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you would be using in that environment, and you would be using in a Kinko's. And here's the thing that's important for you to understand. If I create a piece of art that's 300 pixels per inch, and I turn it into a JPEG, the size is going to be huge. The size of that is going to be huge. Because there's 300 pixels per every inch, and it's going to be visually, it takes up more space. Mm-hmm. So if I do that, and if I then put it into a website, what's going to happen is I'm putting this piece of art in, which is greater in size than it absolutely has to be. And the worst part about it is I gain nothing for the effort, because the bottom line is the screen has not got the ability to understand 300 pixels per inch at all. So if I do that, I'm just basically sending in a big piece of art which is oversized, and the screen is going to only show it at 72 pixels per inch anyway. So one of the things that's very important for somebody who's working on projects like this is to know why and how important it is to make sure that they're using the right level of resolution. So when you are working on something that is going to go into a web environment, you do not want your resolution to be any higher than 72 pixels per inch, maybe 90 at the absolute most. Now, The next step up is digital printing. Now I'm jumping from place to place here. There are a lot of other devices that are out there, but there are general groups of devices that you're going to find yourself working with a lot. Obviously, the web is one of them, and a offset printing environment is another one. And another one that actually turns out to be fairly common is a digital color copier or a laser printer, something like that. The digital color copier has the capacity to understand around 150 pixels per inch. So you're talking 72 and 72, roughly 2 times the amount of pixels. Now, if I give a print over to somebody who is going to be printing it off of a digital printer, and if I make it 300 pixels per inch, well, I mean, not the same kind of headaches are going to occur there, but the thing that you need to understand is that that digital printer will not be able to print anything greater than 150 to 180 pixels per inch anyway. So there's no point in giving them something which is 300 pixels per inch, because it's in the end not going to do any good whatsoever. Now, the other thing is, if you give somebody who is capable of printing 180 pixels per inch an image which is 72 pixels per inch, Amanda, do you know what will happen with that?
If it's only capable of printing, if you give them 72 pixels per inch, but it's capable of printing 180,
Yep.
It's not going to be as good a quality as it's capable of being.
Correct. That's exactly right. You're going to end up with a very inferior looking piece of art. So why am I bothering saying all this is because you're going to eventually reach the point where you're going to be doing this all the time, and it's really important for you to understand that you need to know the basics, and the basics are that there are several different levels of resolution that you should at least know about. Now, here's another one. If we're in a high-end, very expensive offset printing environment, a CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black environment, if you are giving that printer something at 180 pixels per inch, or even worse than that, 72 pixels per inch, you're going to end up wasting a whole lot of money, because those high-end printing environments usually are very expensive. The problem with that is that if you give them something that's bad like that and they print it, it's your fault. So you really, as graphic designer, you need to know the difference between these 3 different levels. So what I'm doing is I'm basically giving you the explanation, and then I've got these three images here that I'm going to play with and show you some things about this, so that those of you who are not so familiar with this will get some idea of how we approach all this. Okay?
May I make a suggestion?
Sure, go right ahead.
If you're going into to do any kind of commercial printing, be it a Kinko's, a Camera Corner, an Office Max, Office Depot, anything like that, and you want a high-grade 300 DPI format, contact the place first, speak with the person who does the printing, and bring the native file. And they generally have the capability to accept the native file and complete the printing with that.
Absolutely. And not only that, but they can give you some indications as to how you might approach setting up your native file to make sure that they have everything that they need. As a matter of fact, that's such a good idea, Amanda, that generally what you would want to do is, depending upon the type of piece that you're doing, you might even call the printer up in advance and find out if they had a standard template for the particular type of project you're working on, so that you don't even have to create the document. You can just basically use their document and build your file right on top of their document. I've done that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've done that many times, and that's a very good idea. So, so that's a great point, is that all of these things that you're doing, maybe not tonight because we're in a class and we're doing some stuff in a class, but where we're all heading is that we're learning this program so we can be designers and work for people. And we're going to be doing these for projects. These are all going to be parts of projects. And it's up to us to kind of know as designers where these projects are heading, and we need to be able to prepare them properly for those projects. We need to know sizes that we're working with. We need to know resolutions, and especially in a program like Adobe Photoshop, which is resolution dependent. If we were in Illustrator, which is resolution independent, then none of this is all that important, because we can create our piece of art, and the only thing that might be important in that case would be if it's a Pantone project, or whether it's a CMYK project. Or
Exactly.
yeah, that would be the only thing. The only thing that you'd have to consider in that. And there aren't that many Pantone projects being done anymore. I mean, it's just simply
Not really.
fact, right? It's simply a fact that with the way things are today, four-color processes become so inexpensive that you find most of the times people are doing the four-color process work, and many people don't even know what Pantone is anymore.
I don't remember the last time I used it. I think it's been at least 5 years since anybody's requested a Pantone color.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. You're absolutely right. I mean, I don't get any. And even if you make a card, I mean, most of the time people make business cards. They go and make four-color process business cards, you know? Yeah, so it's just that kind of a thing. So, okay, yeah, so that's good. Any other questions?
Victoria was, she had a question. It's in the group chat. I don't know if she's muted, but she hasn't answered me. She had
Victoria?
a question.
Oh, no. Oh.
Are you okay?
No, I was saying no when you have. Oh, no, I was saying no when you asked if we have any questions earlier.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Are you okay, Victoria? Because I have you unmuted. You can speak if you want.
I'm okay.
You all right?
I'm all right.
Okay. I don't know why I muted you. I think I muted you because there was some noise or something, and I was trying to put down that. I'm going to try Arthur, too, see what happens.
Yeah.
Arthur, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, there's something going on in your background.
Yes, my fish tank.
That's your, okay. I'm going to mute you. I hate to do it because I like to keep everybody open, but I'm going to have to. All right. So, yeah, so here's what I have. I have these pictures, and I'm showing you the first one here. It's nothing really more than a package, and it's just a piece of art that I had somewhere. So it's package PSD. Now, the first thing that I want to point out to is that when you have a file like this, it gives you certain information that might give you some idea what's going on here. So if you take a look at this picture, here's your picture, and you look up here, and it's telling you that it's at 16.7%. What that means essentially is that the size of this, it's been reduced down to 16.7%. So that would suggest to you 16.7 is a very low number, right? That would suggest to you that this has got to be a pretty big image. So if I go to the View menu and I go Actual Pixel or 100%, can you see how huge that picture is?
Mm-hmm.
Very big picture. So now what we want to do is we want to go to View. Let's go back and Fit on Screen. And I'm going to go to the Image menu. And how we find out more information, oh, and by the way, I'm sorry, I should have continued my thought with this. And now it's at 24.5%, which I actually fit it to screen. So it's still a quarter of its original size. And it also is RGB. This is set to RGB. Now, here's the thing, guys, just so that you understand this, and Amanda, you may know this already. Usually when you're working on a piece of art, you want to keep, and I call a picture a piece of art because we're in a Photoshop document or in a Photoshop environment, and to me, art is art. That's the way I feel about it. So the reason that we keep this in RGB now is because everything that is in Photoshop works much better on RGB. And what I generally do is I generally reserve converting a piece of art into CMYK for the very last moment. So in other words, I will keep this piece of art as an RGB, and I will wait until I'm completely done with everything that I want to do and I'm ready to export it. If it's going to go to print and I have to convert it to CMYK, I convert it then. I
Right.
convert it early on. It stays all the time in RGB until the bitter end, so to speak. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a way of working. All these things that we're talking about tonight come down to things that you want to learn to do as a rule. And you will. You'll find that over time, you'll have enough experience with all this stuff. I mean, I'll be telling you certain things, but you'll find that your own experiences will get you heading in these directions automatically. Amanda, I'm sure you do all this stuff right now, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Because you never know what you're working on, if it's ever going to go to print, or if you're just going to put it on an online portfolio,
Yeah.
or if it's just something that you're doing for fun.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, a lot of times when you're working on a project, you'll find that it will not just go into print, it will probably also be used in the web. So you have to consider that as well. That gets into the size as well too, because I mean the size of images are way different than one another, and usually what I end up doing is if I have a piece of art, like if this was something that I was actually working with, something that we're fooling with tonight, what I would do is I would probably have two of these at some point. One of them
keep
would
the
be
original at the largest possible size
for printing, and then I would make a smaller version more closely to the size that I would be using for web.
Definitely.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to do that so that those of you who don't have experience with that, which Amanda sounds like you do, you guys can see how this is done. So anyway, this thing here, the next thing I want to do is I want to go to the image menu, and I want to come down and I want to go to image size. And here's the image size dialog box. This is something that you all need to become very familiar with because you will be using it constantly. I mean, I would imagine that at least once, maybe even more than once in every project, you will be in the image size dialog box. That's how common it is to go in here and do some things.
I use it all the time.
Yeah, and at least once in a project, right? I mean,
you
may not use it. Yeah, you may not use it more than once. If you do it right the first time, unless of course you're, as I was saying a minute ago, making two versions of something, one for web and one for print, then you might do it more than once. But you will definitely go in one time at least to make sure that the size is where you want it to be, or to set it to the size that you want it to be.
Or the resolution.
Or the resolution. So what we have here in the image size dialog box is we have a width and a height set to pixels, which I'm going to also show you what it looks like in inches. So now this is a 7, almost 8 inch by 12 inch piece of art. So that means that essentially I can get a width of 7, not quite an 8.5 by 11. Well, this is actually 12 inches, so it's a little bit deeper. Not quite 8.5 inches. So if I wanted to bleed this thing, I may have a little trouble with it. And it's got a resolution of 304, which is a little bit more than the norm, which would be 300. So at this rate here, I would probably do a little bit of damage to this file if I were to push my luck and try to make that 8 3/4, because if I were going to use it as a cover, I'd need it to be 8.5, right? Plus 1/4 of an inch, because there's an 1/8 of an inch bleed on either side.
Right.
So I'd have to make that 8 3/4 instead of 8.5 to allow for that 1/4 inch bleed, or an 1/8 on either side. I know some of you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but basically when you are bleeding something off of a page, you have to make sure that the picture is big enough to go actually off the page, and that is called a bleed. And when you are working on something like this, you have to make sure that you have enough image to do that if that's what you want to do. In this particular case, it would probably be what you would want to do, because that image would look better if it actually did bleed off the front of the page if I were to use it.
And that is very important, especially when it goes to print, because if you don't bleed eighth of an inch off each side, when it comes to cropping, even the best commercial printers can be off by a fraction of an inch, and you can end up with a white line on any side of the actual image.
Absolutely, and that could cost a lot of problems, cost you a lot of money.
And
So you really have to know these things. And you know, we're in Photoshop. We're preparing a piece of art which is going to end up going into a program like Adobe InDesign, which is what you use to create let's say a booklet, and this is going to be a cover for a booklet. So you have to make sure that the artwork that you're creating, and this is what's important about what we're discussing here, you have to make sure that you as a designer are preparing your art correctly. And there are a number of things that you have to think about. And of course, the width and height and resolution, very important, but also the size. Is the size big enough to do what you want it to do? One of the first things I said here was that I had it happen to me a number of times where I was working on a piece of art when I was much less experienced with this, and I found that I made this incredibly great piece of art. I was all thrilled and everything, and my boss loved it. Then it turned out when I tried to use it, it wasn't big enough to use. And, you know, I ended up looking like a total idiot, because I should have known going in whether I had enough image or not, and I did not. And this is what you have to avoid. You have to avoid that by learning these things, and that's why we're talking about them tonight.
On this one, if you resample the image and pull the resolution down exactly to 300, would you have the width and the height that you needed?
No, no, there's not enough to remove. I would have to go greater than that to get 7.9. Let's see, it's 8, and so that would be 7.9 of 8. So I have to get 3/4 of an inch. I would probably have to bring it down closer to, and again, I don't know the exact number. I would say probably around 250, maybe in that neighborhood, to get it to go up without it really hurting too much. I mean, look, let's try it. Let's try it. You may not be able to see the difference, but let's go view. Let me hit cancel for a second. That's an interesting point. So let's go view fit on screen. Oh, no, I'm sorry. View actual pixels. That's 100%. Okay. And let me scroll this down a little bit. Let me just scroll this down just a bit.
That's one thing that I do play with. If I'm very close to where I'm at,
yeah,
but my resolution, I can afford to play with a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's not going to distort the image.
Yeah.
If I can get it to move just enough to where I want it, and still be very, very close.
You're right. Here's what I understand. I'm not one that does this much. I try to avoid doing that at all costs, because I happen to know that no matter how insignificant the amount, you are affecting the quality of the image.
Oh, I wouldn't pull it down under 300, but you were at 304, and I don't know how much that would affect the...
Well, what I was going to say to you is that I'm under the impression from people that I've spoken to, and I've spoken to a number of people about this, you generally have a leeway of maybe 17%, but even that's risky. So in other words, I could probably try to up it by 17%. And that's what I think I'm going to try to do. So let's go to the image menu, and let's go back to image size. And let's change this to percent. And since this is locked, oh, and by the way, so that you know this little thing locks it, it constrains it, meaning essentially that whatever I apply to this will also apply to this. It'll keep the height proportional with the width. Do you guys understand that concept? I know Amanda does, but the other guys, you guys following me with this?
Yeah.
Are we okay? Now remember, Amanda's speaking,
that
but you guys have a problem, speak to me. Go ahead, Amanda.
I just said when you're doing this, you always want to make sure that those are linked. Yeah. Or you're going to warp your image.
Right, and that's generally what you don't want to do. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play the little game, and we'll see what happens. So let's see what I would do here. I would come in and say 117%. So let's go in and put 117%. Now, what we're doing is we're enlarging this. So if we want, we could come in here and go bicubic smoother, and I'm not sure, I'm thinking, and I could be wrong on this, I'm thinking that I would like to preserve the details on this. So, but what I'm going to do is I think maybe I'll do this as a two-step process. I'll undo it, and I'll try them both ways, and we'll see what happens. So I'm going to go 117, and I'm going to set the resolution. I'll actually leave the resolution alone, but I'm going to hit Preserve Details and Reduce Noise. I guess I'll just leave the Reduce Noise for now. Let's see what happens with that. Let's hit OK. Now I'm bringing this up from 100% to 117%. That's just slightly less than 20% or 1/5 of its total size, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that neighborhood. So let's hit OK. And it's thinking. And it's doing. And there you go. And you know what? Actually, what do you think?
I can't see a difference.
It doesn't look too bad. Now let's see what size it is. Image size. So let's go back in and let's go to inches. So now it's 9.357. So guess what? We were able to keep the resolution at 304, and we were able to take this image and bring it up to 9.357 inches. So we don't need that much, do we? We need, what,
No.
8 3/4, 8.75, right?
Yeah, you brought it up quite a bit, so maybe half it.
Yeah, what I would do is I would hit cancel.
Yeah, undo.
Edit, undo, or step backwards.
Yeah.
And now my image is back to where it was. And after seeing that I was able to do that, I would then go to image and go to image size. And I would come in here and set it back to inches. And I would set it to, instead of 7.999, knowing I need 8.75. Why do I need 8.75? Anybody can tell me? Not you, Amanda. I don't need you.
I'm sorry.
No. Let the others tell me. Why do I need 8.75, guys? You guys remember what I just said? Anybody? 8.75, because the page is going to be 8.5. 8.5 is 8.5. I need a 1/4 inch bleed, 1/8 inch bleed on either side. So if 8.5...
Arthur typed it into the chat to fit on the paper with the bleed.
Yeah. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in 8.75. And I'm going to come in here, and this time let's try the other one. Let's try bicubic smoother enlargement. And let's hit OK, and let's see what happens with that. So there we go. And you know what? I don't think it really... Well, wait a minute now. Maybe this looks a little bit blurrier.
It might.
It might be just a little bit blurrier. But at any rate, let's go to image size. And you see now the image size is 8.75 by 13 inches. So that gives me more than enough to do what I have to do. So Amanda, my suggestion is that keep in mind that we usually are fairly safe making an enlargement to about 17%. If you want to make something bigger, 17%, you're probably okay to do that. But anything beyond 17% larger without reducing the resolution is going to be a problem. It's not so difficult to make it smaller, but it's a lot of a problem when it comes to making it bigger. It could really ruin your image. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go cancel, and let's go edit, undo.
I do like the first option better than this second, because I agree with you that especially when you step backwards, I see where it did smooth out that section.
Yeah, and I think actually
details did work better.
Yeah, I think it really did. So it really comes down to this. You're talking about pixel data. You're talking about sharp. You've heard of unsharp mask, right?
Yes.
You know what unsharp mask is all about. What it does essentially is it looks at edges, and it defines edges. It improves edges. That's what unsharp masking does. So I think that the first method that we used to enlarge this thing sort of took on the role of like an unsharp mask, and it made it a little tiny bit sharper. And
right.
That's what we were looking for to do that. So this is why you experiment with this. And what I would now do in the future is I'd look at the image. If I had to make it a little bit bigger, I'd look at the image and see what the image is all about.
If it was a smoother image, you would want it to be smoother, and you would use the second option.
That's right. But when you have something that has the detail here, like all this incredible leathery detail,
you would want the detail.
You want that to be sharp. You want that to be really, really nicely defined.
And crisp, yeah.
That's right. All right. So, yeah, so that's that. And let's see here. What was I going to do? There was something I was going to do, and now I'm totally lost.
I don't know. I sidetracked you. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, anyway, that is basically how you enlarge. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I was going to make it. I was going to enlarge it way too big. And so that you could see how it really destroys the image. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to image size. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very stupid mistake. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to set it to inches. And I'm going to say, okay, I need this to be a poster. So I need this thing to be a width of 18 inches by 24. So I'm going to make a poster. Okay, guys? This is what this is for. This is a poster. There is a size 18 by 24.
And it's a bad idea.
Yeah, wait till you see what happens. So again, this is the kind of mistake that I might have made at very early on, simply because I didn't know what I was doing. Now, if this picture was 36 inches high, then I could reduce it down to 18 by whatever the width or whatever the height would be, and I would be able to use that image. But this image is only 7, not even 8 inches wide, and it's only got a resolution level of 304. And I can't raise the resolution on it. It's not going to work. So the only thing I can do is lower it or leave it alone. In this case, I'm going to leave it alone, and I'm going to make it 18 inches by 24. And look, I think you can already see what's happening. Look it.
Detail.
Can you see what's happening already? Yeah. But I want you to actually see it. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to make every effort to try to make this better. I'm going to hit preserve details. You see what it did? It did bring them back. Now watch when I hit OK. Now it's resampling it, so it's taking a minute.
We more than doubled the size.
Yeah, and you're gonna see it. There's no way out of it. You're gonna see it, and it is not going to be acceptable. It really is not. Wow, this thing's really struggling. Any day now.
It knows you did a bad thing.
It probably does. It knows I did something very stupid. So now it's going to punish me on top of everything else. But wow, this thing's really...
It's stuck. The little thingy isn't even moving anymore.
Right. Oh, man. Oh, this shouldn't be that big of a deal. I got a pretty powerful computer here. This is not, this is not a little...
Oh, you're running a PC. It's going to do this.
Yeah. Anyway, eventually this thing is going to
explode.
It's going to come up, and you're going to see that this thing is going to fuzzy up. The whole thing is going to look muddy. And it just isn't going to be sharp. It isn't going to be sharp. It isn't going to be usable. I mean, I'm sure that there would be someone crazy enough to use it, but the majority of the people that I work with would not accept it at all, and it is not the way to do it. So really, you just want to avoid doing things like this. It's the kind of thing that you got a certain size, you got a certain resolution, you have to work with it. There are programs that you could get, and you're talking extra money, that would actually do some pixel doubling, which would, oh, here we go.
There you go. It's moving.
Yep, we're getting somewhere. There, okay, check it out. You see already? Can you see it? Let me go view, zoom out. Put it on screen. And I want to zoom in. I want to zoom in.
Oh, you can tell just by that it lost all the detail.
Yeah.
Look, what?
What are you doing?
I have no clue. I have no idea what this is. Here we go. Oh, come on. Let me go view.
Yeah, that leather look isn't so defined anymore.
View 100%. There we go. Okay, and now if I just grade, yeah, there you go. Now you see when you see it this 100%, you see what's happening here? I mean, it isn't the worst thing, but now you're looking at this thing at 100%, and you can see that this is a kind of a muddy looking, very pixelated and just not as sharp and sweet as it should be.
The shadows have no detail at all.
Yeah, it's just not right. It just isn't right to do this. So that's a demonstration that I think is one of the most important things for you to take away tonight is that you are limited in what you can do as far as making things bigger in this program. This program is an incredibly good program. It does amazing things, but it does not have any more capacity to make things bigger than any other program that's out there. They have not been able to improve on that very well. So you're limited in what you could do. So I'll go edit, undo that. All right, and now we come back to our original size, and this is a much better image at this point. We're back to where we started with. So just keep in mind that image size and image resolution is very important for all the work that you're going to do. Right now, what we have here is something which is just a little bit under 8 inches wide, and it's 304 pixels. So 300 pixels per inch is what you would use. So if I needed this particular picture to be going into some sort of a print environment, a very good print environment, I would be okay with this at this size. I could possibly get away with it maybe to 8.5 by 11 because I did that and it looked like it might be okay to get away with. I would say we were able to pull it off with that, but it's still risky to do that, and I tell you to do that and not any more than that ever. But here's the other thing now. Let's say that this particular image, we wanted this image to be brought down, and this was going to be printed off of a Canon color copier, okay? So what I need for that is not 304. And as I was saying to you before, it's important for you to understand, I don't need 304 pixels because the color copier doesn't understand that many pixels anyway. It has a limitation of 180 pixels. So that means I would have no trouble making this 180, okay, and changing the width on this because I want it to bleed, but wait a minute, you can't bleed off of a color copier either, can you?
No, not unless you're using a larger piece of paper.
And then you're going to cut it out. So let's say we are not using a larger piece of paper. So that would mean that I would have to have at least 1/4 of an inch. So it would mean that the biggest this image could possibly be would be 8 by 8.5 by 11, 8 by 10.5, right? Because you need about 1/4 of an inch. Well, you probably could go a little bit more, but I think 1/4 of an inch is about fair. So I'm going to say that I make this 8 inches, and I'm going to preserve the details, and I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to go View, Fit, and Window, Fit on Screen. There it is. And I'm going to go to Image Size, and I have this 8 by 180. There you have it. Now it is 12 inches in height, but that's okay. It means I crop a little bit either at the top or the bottom when I create my picture box in InDesign. So do you understand what I'm doing here essentially is I'm preparing the same piece of art for output to a program which is going to send it into a digital environment. That's what you want. That's the resolution that you're looking for, 180, no more than 180. You just don't need it. All right?
Quick question.
Yeah, go right ahead.
You're still linked why didn't the height change when you changed the width?
That's a good question. It didn't.
No.
Go image size 1206 inches 1206. I don't know. That's a good question. I have no idea why it didn't change. That's an odd one because it should have 8.5 by. I don't know. That's strange, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it didn't. I don't know why I did that. 12, 8. So what was the original? Let me cancel.
Well, maybe it did, and maybe I missed it.
I don't think it did.
No, I don't think it did either. So it's 8 inches, fit to original size. 8 by 12, 6, 180. It should automatically adjust. Yeah, so it's not, doesn't appear to be adjusting at all, does it?
Mm-mm.
So I don't know. That's an odd one. I would have expected it to do that, and it just isn't doing that. Hit OK, and let's go image size, and it is still 1206 by 1 by 8. I don't know.
Oh, Arthur's saying in the chat that it was 11.7 before the change. Okay, we missed it.
I guess so. Too busy yakking, huh? 11.7 before the change.
This is okay. So that's now it's 1206 by. Okay, so at any rate.
Yeah, so it did go up a little bit when we went to 8. All right, we missed it.
Yep. All right. At any rate, now I have something which will work in that environment. This is the important thing, though, right here, the number. Okay, because as I was trying to explain to you, when you're preparing a piece of art, you need to know what you're preparing it for. And you need to know that there are reasonably simple ways to do it. I mean, for instance, if you are working on something which is going to go to a 4-color process printer, what you really have to remember is 300 pixels per inch. The only reason you would change that number is if the printer that you speak to tells you specifically to do that. If he doesn't tell you to do that, then 300 pixels per inch is usually perfect for him. As far as a digital color copier is concerned, generally 180 is what they want. And you don't want to give them any less because you'll get a crappy image. You don't want to give them any more because if you give them any more, they can't use it anyway. And they're going to end up, it's just not right. It just isn't the right way to go. You're better off taking the extra moment and making it correct. Only if to teach yourself to do these things, okay?
And if you're printing at home, your instruction manual should be able to tell you what is acceptable for your home printer.
Right, your home printer will give you instructions on it. Well, you can pretty much count on a home printer like that, guys, being around
about 150 or 180.
Yeah, I'm going to say probably you're going to find most of them, if you have a home printer, will be about 180. They probably won't be much more than that, maybe 200, but probably around 180 is about what that is. All right, so I'm going to hit cancel here. And now the other thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go image size, and you're going to want to save this thing for web. Now, when you go to save this thing for web, I would say go in and set it to pixels. And then what you're going to do is you're going to make a determination of how big you want this to be. Now, again, I have no idea how big I want this to be, so I'm going to say I'm going to make it a width of 300 pixels. So I'm going to make it 300 pixels wide. Now, notice that the height did change on this down to 450. So it's 300 by 450. Now, the other thing that you have to remember here is this. You have to come in here and you have to adjust this down to either 72 pixels per inch or 90. One of the computers, and I think it's the Mac, can only tolerate 72 pixels per inch. And if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong because I'm not an expert on this, but I think the PC goes to 90. That's what I think it is. But at any rate, you can go 90, you can go to 72. I generally just go 72 because usually 72 is more than good enough for that. Now, the other thing, too, is you can come in here and you could come in here and say choose bicubic sharper for reduction. okay? And now you've got 300 by 450, 180, and bicubic sharper. I hit OK, and now I go, now I want you to see that this is set to 41.5%. If I go view 100%, there is the image that you're going to be using for the web. So do you guys get it? Any questions about it?
Mm.
Now, as far as saving images are concerned, this is kind of important because you're going to be working on images and you're going to need to save them. So I just want to very quickly do this for you. Go File, Save for Web, and you open up the Save for Web dialog box. And I have this set up, here's the original, and I have it set up to 2UP. And what 2UP is doing essentially is it's showing me the original. This is the original Photoshop document. And it is 396 kilobytes, which, I mean, it's bit information. And this one here is 136.3 kilobytes, and this is set to a maximum quality of 100. So here's the point. A maximum quality theoretically means that I'm not really reducing it, but guess what? I'm reducing it quite a bit, aren't I? Because if you take a look at it, 136.3K is what, like less than a third of 396K?
Mm-hmm.
So, well, it's probably a third. That's probably what it is, about close to a third. So this goes back to what you were saying, Amanda, about every time you go in and you mess with a JPEG, this is how much I'm losing on that JPEG already. So if I go back in and mess with it again, I could lose that more, or I could lose some more again. So that's why you don't want to do that. You never want to rework a JPEG. When you have a JPEG, the JPEG becomes obsolete. For whatever reason, you want to throw it away. And you want to go back into your original file, and you want to fix whatever you have to fix on it, and then re-export it as a JPEG. Okay?
And I always look at it at least at 2UP because you can tell side by side, looking at the original artwork and the JPEG beside of it, you can see how dark the JPEG is in contrast to the original.
Right. And what you're trying to do here, guys, is you're trying to optimize this, which means essentially you're trying to reduce the size of the file while you keep the quality of the image as good as possible. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click and drag this all the way down to 2. Okay, now look at the image. Can you see how terrible that image looks?
Mm-hmm.
Look at what it says here, 4.1884K. Which means that is an incredibly small file. And that would be really great if we could make that file that size. But in order to make that file that size, this is what your artwork looks like. So the process of what you're doing here is you're going to slowly bring this up, and you're going to keep your eye on your image, and you're going to look at it and see how long it takes to get it to look like the original, and where you are as far as your optimizing goes. This is called lossy, and this is what JPEG is all about. It's a lossy file format. I'm at 15.53K. I'm not quite where I want to be yet. I'm at quality 40. I'm going to bring it up to 50. Let's see what 50 looks like. I'm at 21.7K, and I probably should bring it up a little bit more, although I think you can see it looks a lot improved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bring it up a little bit more. Let's bring it up to 70. Let's see what 70 looks like. Okay, 40.39K, 70, I might be able to live with that. So I would then hit save, and on my desktop, I would save my package, and there on my desktop is my package. When I open it, there it is. There's your image that you just saved for the web. Okay? And again, this is set to 72 pixels per inch, optimized and ready to go into a website or whatever you're going to do with it. Okay? Guys, got any questions?
And for this class, we will need to use the JPEG format, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. But you don't have to actually optimize the JPEG. You could simply, let me go here and go File, Save As. You could actually just come in here and go down and choose JPEG and go to your desktop. I'll save it on my desktop. JPEG, and hit save. And I'm going to replace the one that I just optimized. You will get this JPEG options dialog box. And let me just give you a little bit of advice on this. You want to make sure that you set it to a quality maximum, larger file. But I want you to take a look at what it says over here. What does it say there, guys?
171.2K.
Exactly. Do you guys remember it was more like 396K?
Yes.
The original?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's happening here?
You're still maximizing and saving the file size.
Right. So if I do this, if I hit OK, and then I open that JPEG back up, and I fool with it, and I save it as a JPEG, what do you think's going to happen?
You're going to mess it up.
You're going to take that same number and you're going to erase all of that. Even if you have set to 12 maximum, you're going to throw away all that image file, all that image information again.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying to you, you cannot, you should not, don't ever use
Reuse a JPEG.
Yeah, you can't get away with it. Just you can't get away with it. You're killing yourself. Each time you're throwing away tons of information. So you just don't want to ever do it. Okay?
Right.
Now, this is my wallpaper. This is my wallpaper. And I just want to quickly show you this. I got about 20 minutes here. And what I did essentially was I created, with my wallpaper, a series of layers. All right, and I'll close some of these off and I'll talk a little bit about how I did this. So I have a bunch of images that came in a CD that I purchased a long time ago. And what I did with mine was I wanted to see if I could come up with something rather unique looking for my wallpaper. And by the way, my wallpaper, I did not make it to the prescribed size of 4" by 9". As a matter of fact, I can show you. Go to image size. And mine is like, let's go to inches here. Mine is actually 33.333 by 22.222, 72. The only reason I could do that is because the size of these images are huge. You don't have to do that. I did it because the images are big. You guys understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Also, I have this set to 72. So what does that mean? That means if I wanted this thing to be a poster, 24, let's say it's 18 by 24. If I wanted to, I could take this, since it's 72 pixels per inch and this is 33, I could probably go up there and set this to, if I wanted to bleed, it would be 24 and a half, 24.5, and this is 16, so actually that wouldn't work. I'd have to do it this way. I'd have to go 18.5. and it would be 27.5. And what I'd have to do is I'd have to set the resolution to 300, and I don't know whether that's going to even work. Let me try it and see.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When I resample images, I usually uncheck the box and do all three at once because it connects all three together so that you can see what's happening.
When you uncheck the box, it doesn't resample the image. It keeps the image at the same size. See, by resampling the image, what you're doing is you're changing.
Well, the only thing that I edit is the resolution.
Oh, yeah, but you're keeping the image the same size. What I just did was I changed the size of this. This is now closer to 18 by 24, which would be a poster size. And I only did that just so I could show you what it would look like if I did it. And actually, this doesn't look that bad because it was bigger. It was actually bigger. So if you take a look at the image size on this right now, look, image size. The image size on this guy is 27.75, 18.5. And resolution at 300 pixels per inch. Okay? And I made it bicubic sharper for reduction. So now I got this image down to a poster size, which has nothing to do with the project, but I'm just trying to show you that this image was so big that I was able to bring it down in size. This is what you're looking for. When you're working on projects like this, you always want your pictures to be as big as possible because you have a lot more leeway with a big image bringing it down to a smaller image than you have with an image trying to make it larger. You can go much further down than you can come up. Okay?
Yep.
All right. All right, so what I did here was I came in and I used some of the basic things that you do in Photoshop. Like, for instance, I bring an image, and this is just a regular old image here. Now, this image here, you'll see that I actually, I subtracted this image. Now, there's a bunch of blend modes in here that I really think you should play with and take a look at. Let me first of all show you what the original looks like. Bring this up from 21% all the way up. It's actually blue denim. So what I did was I took that layer, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to enhance this a little bit. I didn't want blue denim, but I wanted this to have a little bit more of a fabric look. So I brought this in, placed it on top of it. I went up here and I changed the opacity level. Bring the opacity level down, and I think I brought it down to like 21. I'm going to make it 24. Can you see the look you're starting to get already?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're blending the two together. And then I just played with blend modes, and you can see I want you to play with these yourself and see what some of these do. They change. They subtract or add in based on what blend mode you're using here. And I think I used subtract is the one that I ultimately ended up with. Yeah. So there's that layer, okay? And it's just basically been reduced down, the opacity level, and the blend mode has been changed. Do you guys understand opacity and blend modes? Do you have any questions about opacity and blend modes that you want to ask me right now?
No.
Okay.
I'm
So,
good.
essentially, you can take any layer that you want and you can blend it into other layers by using a level of opacity. I do it on several of these layers. Here's another layer. What I did with this was I used a soft light. I'm going to bring it to normal, and you can see what this is. All this is essentially is some peeling paint. Now, the other thing that I did to this was I added a layer mask. You guys know what a layer mask is? Anybody?
I do.
Okay. I'm going to throw this layer mask away so I can demonstrate what this layer mask really does. I'm just going to delete it. So here's my picture. I have my picture here. And what I want to do is I want to blend part of the picture into the background. I do that by applying right here a layer mask, add layer mask. So with the layer selected, I click on the layer mask. I then come over to where my, here it is. I have my, normally you'd see the paint bucket tool over in your toolbar, okay? But underneath the paint bucket tool, as with many of these tools, there are other tools. And the one that I'm looking for is the gradient tool right there. And I went up here into the properties bar, and you got all these different gradients. And to make a mask like this, you just want a basic black and white. That's what you use for a black and white mask. Okay, and now that I have my mask selected and I have a gradient selected, I'm going to come to the bottom of my screen. I'm clicking, holding the mouse down, and I'm going to drag straight up till about the middle of the piece and let go. And can you see what's happening? You see how my
You have a radial gradient, and it is white to black.
yeah, I got the wrong gradient. I'm sorry. There you go. Let me fix that. Okay, now I get that. I got the right gradient. Now if I click and hold shift, drag it up. There, you see what it does? It makes it more or less disappear. And I can go all the way up to the top, which is I think what I did. And there, you see, now you've got something happening up above. That's essentially what I did here. So really, all of these different layers are just being mixed together to create a composite image. It's the same thing with this. Here I've got a piece of art which I'll disable this layer mask so you can see it. And essentially what this is I'm going to come back up and set it to normal. Okay? This is just really a piece of silk or satin or whatever. I guess it's satin, right? And what I wanted to do is I wanted to just get some color out of this, and I didn't want it to color the entire piece. So I put another layer mask on that, and it does this. And then what I did was I came in here and, again, played around with my layers, and I didn't like that look. I don't remember exactly which one I used. I think it was color. or hue. Yeah, I think it was probably hue or color, one of those two. But anyway, what I'm doing essentially is I'm taking different layers and I'm mixing them together visually. And I'm using some of the basic tools that you use in Adobe Photoshop, which is essentially a series of layers. And then you have these layers interacting by adding and subtracting stuff to them. So a couple of things that I think I'd like to show you is, let's go up to the wallpaper, because this is kind of interesting. So one of the things that I'm going to want you to do is I'm going to want you to incorporate a little type into this. So let me get the wallpaper. Let me move this down a little bit. And
Can I make a quick statement?
yeah, go ahead.
Because Arthur wasn't completely clear on the aspects of the masks. I just wanted to clarify. Anything in the layer mask that is covered with the black is going to hide what is underneath.
Yeah, black
So
conceals, white reveals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And you can reverse that in the layer mask. You can choose reveal all or you can choose conceal all and start off in either direction.
Yep.
And you can go in at any time with the brush using or the paint bucket or anything else.
Yeah, and
With the black or white brush and touch up areas you may want to correct.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's a good point because to be honest with you, sometimes you might be doing a fairly complex. This is something that you'll do in week 3. You'll actually do this in week 3 where you're actually going to be putting together a montaged image of a fantastic animal. And that is one of the things that you're going to do is you're going to silhouette certain parts of different images and morph them together to make a composite image. And one of the good ways to do this is to actually make a layer mask and then just do the painting with the black and the white to paint some of this out. It all depends on how well you handle the mouse. I generally find my own experience is I usually use these two tools here. I usually use that one, the polygon lasso, or the pen tool.
I do too. The polygonal lasso tool is really good at clinging to the edges of like certain shapes.
Yeah.
And instead of using a mouse or a trackpad, I find that using a pen and tablet or make a world of difference, but not everybody has access to that.
Yep, and there's also up here under the select menu, you can also go in and refine your mask, which I probably will show you not next week, but the week after that, probably.
When you're actually doing that part, yeah.
Yeah, the refined mask. What it'll do essentially is it'll go in there and allow you to move around the pixels, play with the pixels somewhat. I'll show you how to do it. You're going to like it. Again, this is like most of the basic kind of stuff that you do. I have just enough time to show you some text, though. So I want to actually show you the text, and maybe I'll try to show you this little shape as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that Arthur, because he's muted because of his fish tank, I wanted him to know that black conceals and white reveals because he's only able to talk in the chat.
I unmuted him. Are you okay, Arthur?
Yes, sir.
You're good?
Yes, sir.
Any questions while I got you unmuted so far? Are you okay?
The gradients. I've seen whenever you first did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like a little circle.
Yeah, because there are different types of gradients, and I wasn't really paying attention. It's a little difficult to teach people and pay attention to what you're doing. When you do this work, you should be a little more focused. And I tend to be more of a teacher than a technocrat when I'm doing this work. So I can make these mistakes because I'm mostly concentrating on talking to you and telling you things and not what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I'm not equally balanced when it comes to that. So I can make mistakes like that easy, and that's just a mistake. It was simply when you click on gradient, when you go to gradient there are different types of gradients right here. This is your properties bar, by the way, guys. Each time you click on any one of those tools, you'll see that that property bar updates with different settings that you can use. And I got to tell you, these settings are phenomenal. I mean, like, you can go in and you can adjust the flow and the opacity of paintbrushes, and it's just crazy cool. So you really should be aware of this. The gradient, you have...
And all you have to do is hover over those things, and they'll tell you what they are.
Yeah, that's right. So here you've got, like, for instance, a linear gradient. You got a radial gradient. This is an angular gradient and a reflective gradient. And then this is a diamond gradient. And then you can come in here, and believe it or not, you can actually play around with the blend modes here as well. Okay? But just do it for the time being. Do me a favor, guys. Play around with your opacity here on your layers and your blend modes here, just to get the feel of them. And don't be afraid to experiment with them. So let me just quickly put some type on here, because this is something else you want to do. So I'm going to click on the text tool. I guess I need to get a layer. I gotta close you out, because unfortunately, there we go. I'm getting seasick. All right, so
I'm watching his questions in the chat.
Yeah, okay, so there's the text tool. I'm going to click and I'm going to place some text. I'm just going to type wallpaper. Okay, so there's wallpaper. Now, what I did with this wallpaper was I brought it in. It's huge. It's probably bigger. I don't have enough time to, I've got 5 minutes. All right, so I'm going to set this up. Here's my layer that has the wallpaper on it. See it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can double click on that, and now my text has been reselected, and I can come in here on, again, the properties bar, and I can change the width of this from 470 to 400, okay, and now I got a size which is a little bit more manageable, okay, and what I did essentially was I put an effect on this guy. So I basically put a bevel and emboss effect on it, and I actually increased the size of it quite a bit. And I don't know whether I think I darkened the opacity. I darkened that quite a bit, and I think I went normal. Well, it doesn't really change. Oh, that's the white. I'm sorry. That's what the problem is. I need to go black. There we go. That's what I did. I did that. And then I went, let's see, I think the size went up to probably about there. And I think I set it to 90. Nope, it was actually more like that. Doesn't look exactly the same. Oh, there it is, maybe the depth. There we go, that's what it was. I set the depth higher. Okay, so there we go. And I probably went a little bit too high with that. Let's go back this a little bit. Right about there. That's good. And then the size. There we go. Okay, so that's sort of it. That's more or less what I did. Okay, so now I have that. Hit OK. So that's basically what I did. And I have the bevel and emboss effect here. Okay? And now what I wanted to do is I wanted to get rid of that white that's in there. Now, I have two things that I could do. I could come over here and I could drag the opacity down, but that's going to make everything opaque, which is not what I want. What I want is I want this to look like it's carved. So what I'll do is, instead of going to the opacity, there's also a fill opacity. So what that means essentially is, you see the white in there? That's the fill. So I can come in and I can drag the level of the fill opacity down, and you see what it's doing? It's making the fill go away. And I drag it all the way. That's what it looks like when it's completely gone. But I don't want it to be completely gone. I want it to be a little bit. So I bring it back up to about maybe right there. And now what I have is that, which kind of looks a little bit like a semi-transparent situation of the text. Guys, got any question about that?
Nope.
Think you could do it?
Yep.
At least you could give it a try, right?
Yeah.
And remember, I'm here tomorrow night 5 to 7. I'm here Wednesday night from 7 to 11 and Saturday from 7 to 12. If you have any questions, if you have any situation at all where you want to just come in and talk to me about any of this, feel free to do so. The other thing is you could also use more than one effect here. You could actually come in here and apply more than one effect to this. So let me grab that wallpaper layer again, and let's come down here and let's see if I can put in an inner glow, inner shadow. There we go, inner shadow. Now, the one thing that I would want to do with this, I think, is I would want to remove the global light aspect of it. And what I want to do is I want to bring in the distance on it. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Yeah, inner shadow. There we go. There we go. Bringing up the inner shadow. Let's bring this down. Well, this doesn't really seem to be doing all that much. Actually, that's what I'm looking for. I want it to be a little bit deeper. That's the look I want. So it looks more like it's carved into the thing. And if you want, you can remove it by doing that. Hit OK. And now I've got 2 effects on this. And that's what it looks like if you remove the effects. Then the other thing that I did here is I put a shape up here. And all I did with the shape is you can come into your basic shape tool right here to custom shapes. And up here, you see, you have different shapes. And you could even come in and you could load some different shapes. There's all kinds of different shapes. The ones that I have is called the Grime Vector Pack. Can you see that right there? See where I am?
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was, I'm going to cancel that because I already got it in there. But you come down to here where the basic shapes are, and you click on the custom shape right there. And then your properties bar, and then you can come up here and you can pick on any one of these grime shapes that you want, and click on it, create a layer, and drag your shape out. And there's your shape. And then what you could do with your shape is you can apply effects to it, just like I did. Come in here, and I'll put a bevel and emboss on it, and it'll give me that bevel and emboss. Let's see size. There we go. Hit OK. And then I can literally pick this thing up like this and change the color of it. Let me cancel. There we go. And change the color. There. And then I can do the same thing where I come in here and I drag this out and I can make it lighter. And then I can go select, deselect. And there I have my shape. And if I want to come into the bevel and emboss, I double click on it again. And I can come in here and I can set the opacity level up on that higher. And come in if I want. I can soften this thing a little bit. Scale it down if I want. Change the depth on it. And I can even change the direction on it. There we go. Hit OK. And you see what I did? I actually played around with this little shape. So that's how I made these shapes. And these are some of the things that you can do with this. And these are some of the things that I would like to see you play with. You have any problems when you do this, come and see me tomorrow, like I told you, or on Wednesday or Thursday. I'm good. You guys got any final thoughts or any questions?
All good.
Okay. Then you guys have a good evening. And remember where to find me. And I will see you at least next week at the same time, unless you stop by to visit me. All right?
Okay.
Okay.
You have a good night.
You too. Bye.